Whenever we hear the story of Martha and Mary, we can always ask ourselves, who are we like, Martha or Mary? Kind of making a black and white distinction of what's going on. Jesus says Mary has chosen the better part. But Martha is trying to do good. Martha's trying to be a good host, caring for Jesus. Think of how Jesus, when he's preaching to the crowds who come to hear him, Jesus sees the needs of the people, feeds the 5,000. Martha, on a much smaller scale, is trying to do the same thing. She's trying to do what's right. When we hear this, sometimes I think we try and make it very black and white. Are we Martha or are we Mary? Kind of saying it's right and it's wrong. But Jesus never tells Martha what she's doing is wrong. He says to Martha, Mary has chosen the better part. Not that that's the only thing that's right. Martha is trying to be a good host, to do what's expected of her, both in the culture of the time and biblically. And we can look at the reading with Abraham. Abraham sees these strangers coming, and he prepares a meal for them. And not just any ordinary meal, but it says a great meal. Describes some of that meal, and how Abraham personally picks out a tender choice steer for the meal, signifying the importance of it. Abraham is trying to be a good host. Martha wants to be a good host. Jesus tells us to love our neighbor, to care for the needs of the people who come before us. And that's what Martha is trying to do. So where does she go wrong, so to speak? Not to do what Jesus speaks of her. Is she really doing anything wrong? Versus just being a good host. I've gone to people's house before where they prepare a great meal, try to be a great host. And then I've been there literally for 3 hours, say, and you never hardly end up seeing the host because they're spending all their time in the kitchen. And when I go to somebody's house, not that I don't enjoy a good meal, but I go to see the people. For myself, quite frankly, I'd rather go and have hamburgers from the grill and chips and see the people whose house I go to than go and have some great meal but never see the people. Of course, it's not to say, again, we don't want to make it too black and white. It's possible to make a good meal, a good complete meal, without spending hours in the kitchen. What Martha wanted to do was right. But she was seeing all that duty, that expectation of what she was supposed to do, and trying to do it well. Mary, on the other hand, Mary wanted to spend time with Jesus. It's about relationships. It's not just about feeding people physically, but to treat them as people, to recognize the giftedness they have, to spend time with them. And we can ask ourselves, do we make time for the people in our lives? Again, not just to have them to our house and give them a good meal, but when they come, do we really spend time with them? Do we value them as a person? And then we can ask ourselves the same question of our time with Jesus. Do we make time for Jesus? The answer to that might seem relatively obvious, because here we are in church. So we could say, of course we make time for Jesus. But do we come here out of simply a sense of obligation? Or do we come here because we truly want to hear what Jesus has to say? And then do we take what we gain in our celebration of our Mass and go and live it during the week, to actually carry it out? And do we make time during the week to listen to Jesus? An hour for Mass on Sunday is not enough. We need to keep listening to Jesus, to think about how we live out what he said to us. Jesus says to love our neighbor, and to love God. Part of that is to spend time with Jesus, the people around.